speech ready, a friend of mine said, look, Philip, just say whatever you feel. And Mary says, that's what I'm afraid of. On behalf of Mary and myself, I'd like to begin by officially welcoming you all here and to say how much we appreciate the effort you've all made just to be here today with us. I'm sure my Irish neighbours won't mind if I say a special word of welcome to our overseas visitors. I'd like to welcome the members of Mark's family. Mark's mother Mary and his father Joe, his brothers and sisters and their family members, and his relatives and friends who have travelled from the different parts of the United States to be with us. I'd also like to welcome very dear friends of myself and Mary who travelled all the way from Peterborough in Canada, that's Sean and Karen Troy, especially for the wedding. Before I just continue, ladies and gentlemen, I always look for, and do odd queer things in my day, but when I stand here today and think of the life we had, or have had so far, it makes me reflect on a few people who sadly are not here, and I'd just like to take a moment, if I may, just to remember them. I'd like to begin by remembering Mary's mother and my late father, because those two people would be very pleased to be here today to see their godchild Deirdres get married. I'd like to remember too Mary's dad, because his advice and guidance to us when we first got married meant that the life that we had, and hence the life that Deirdre had, was perhaps better than it might ordinarily have been. I'd like to remember too my eldest brother Tony, who died while Deirdre was in Chicago. Him and Tony was a big guy with sometimes he had a beard, and if you didn't know him, he could be intimidating. He was the softest guy on earth, but lovely fella. But Deirdre and Tony had a great rapport, and Deirdre wasn't in the slightest bit intimidated by him, and her and Tony had a great rapport over the years, and I'd just like to remember him too. And finally, I'd like to remember the deceased members of the Marin family who have made a contribution to their lives. We remember them all. May they all rest in peace. Now, none of those folks, ladies and gentlemen, would want us to be here and to be unhappy. This is a happy occasion, and if they were here, they'd be kicking their heels too. As I stand up here today, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say that I don't know what I look like from down there, but from up here, I definitely feel I'm too young to be father of the bride. When I think of our start in life, myself and Mary, which will come back to in a minute, I think of where we came from, and I came from a family of 9, 8 boys and a girl, and I know Deirdre's delighted to have you all here today, but there's one person she's really thrilled to have, and so am I, and that's my mum here at this table, and we're both delighted to have her. So when you have a house full of 8 fellas and 1 girl, the fellas, you get a few jobs to do. Now, I was the 3rd eldest, so I fell into a few jobs all right. One of the jobs you always got was nursing, particularly the younger brothers. Now, Kieran and Brendan here wouldn't remember, but I was spent a wee while. I did my intern on New Paradise, and by the time that Corey came along, I was delegated to staff nurse. Now, Corey, those are the days of the cloth nappies. 3 diaper days, Corey, I should add.
I remember well.
Did I do a good job, Rita? But take Mary on the other side. In Mary's family, there was just Mary and Anna was the baby. Anna, what can I say? Was there ever such a beautiful baby? As Mary would confirm to you, ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't be a person who'd be known to exaggerate. But I have to say that Mary and I are very proud of the 4 members of our family, of Aidan, Deirdre, Gregory and Ciara. And I don't have to exaggerate when I'm talking about them. Now, when I think back on our lives together, there's a few, I could stand here for 2 hours talking, but I'm going to tell you 2 little stories, because they really stick out in my mind. One some years ago, one very recent. But when I think of Deirdre did her degree at Maynooth, because it's still as Deirdre's day. She was there from 89 to 92. She did her diploma in UCD from 92 to 3. Then she took off to Chicago. Now, that's a big story. But in 96, 2 weeks ago, this last Saturday fortnight, I think, her brother's last Saturday week. Last Saturday morning, she finished her Masters in UCD. And to me, whatever else my daughter is, she is one determined lady, and she saw it through to the end. But I would like to relate you to a little story now that happened. The bridal party today when we walked up to church was led by this young lady sitting here. This is Kira. And the day that Kira was born is a day that will stick out in my mind for a long and many a day. I was in the hospital with Mary when Kira was born. And I have to say, fellas, I want to tell you this for now, it's definitely a man's world. And we don't look after ladies half well enough, I can assure you. But the day that Kira was born, I went over to tell Aidan and Deirdres and Gregory that they had a new baby sister. Now we had been a very close-knit unit up until that. Gregory was the baby, so how was he going to take to having a new baby? Deirdres was only a girl, how was he going to take the fact that you're now going to have a sister? Well, that's for Aidan. As long as you can play football, it'll be okay. But I left the hospital and went over to Aidan was the first school en route. And when I got to Aidan, and when Aidan was in a class of 35, 12 to 13-year-olds, first year in secondary school. And maybe fellas in 13-year-old in secondary school won't go and be talking about babies. But anyway, I arrived into this class and I said, I called them out, and the door didn't close behind them, so all the guys were sitting looking out, you know, fellas do. And I said to Aidan, Mommy had a baby girl and a new sister. Now, I'm telling this against myself, because I didn't think he'd react the way he did. He was so emotional and so delighted and so thrilled that the other lads in the class started shaking hands with him and clapping him on the back. It just wasn't what I expected for some reason. I then went to Deirdre, but before I tell you what happened with Deirdre, I'll tell you what happened with Gregory. I went to Gregory then. Gregory was 7 going on 8, with a big head of curls and a little grey uniform on him. And Gregory came out, and I sat down at my hunkers beside him, and I said to Greg, Mommy's had a baby girl. And he just looked at me, his eyes just lit up, and a big smile on his face. Oh, that's great, he said. And is Mom okay? Well, that would be Greg. That's just the way Greg operates. But when I got as far as Deirdre, tell you what, Deirdre came out with Deirdre, I have to say, fellas, the girls would buy and sell you. She came out, now she was probably 8 going on, she was not 9 going on 10, alright? Deirdre came out, and as soon as she saw me, she knew I had something to say. The other part of it didn't, but she knew. So she just looked at me. Have you ever seen any of those wildlife programs and you see a lion about to approach something? The head is out, the ears are up, the eyes are wide-eyed, and she walked up to me. And she just knew that I was going to tell her something. And I wasn't sure because she was only a girl, so I was a bit concerned. We hadn't discussed this. I didn't know what she wanted, really. You know, I said, Mommy had a baby girl. Well, she went ballistic. There was a Sister Francis, the principal in the school. Sister Francis convinced she was emotional, and Deirdre got a hold of me and she started dancing around. And Sister Francis started crying. She was crying. Sister Francis was crying. The teacher was crying. I was crying. And half the bloody class was crying. But it was just one of those emotional times when you, if Deirdre has something to show you about emotion, you'll see it. The second time she surprised me was the day we met Mark. I have been planning to go to our dear friends in Canada, Sean and Karen, for a long number of years, but listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a parcel you want delivered anywhere in the world, I'm your man. I will fly anywhere. But Mary will fly nowhere. Mary is afraid of flying. One of these things, people like that, it's not a problem. But anyway, Sean and Karen got us for years to go over, and when Deirdre was in Chicago, now I won't go through the details of the sad Christmas we had the first day, but she must have had 2 over there, because she was on her own. It was the first year our family unit had been broken for Christmas Day that she wasn't there, and it was a pretty sad day. We enjoyed it, but she was pretty tough over there on her own. It was rough. But anyway, we convinced her, well, that's what I think, Jerry, yeah. I convinced Mary that if we flew to Toronto for holidays, that Deirdre would drive up from Chicago. But I had spoken to this. I had no idea where Chicago was in relation to Toronto. through with a 12-hour hard slog of a drive, non-stop. I don't know how many hundred miles it is, a long, long way. But anyway, we went over on the 28th of March of, I think it was 94, as we did here, and that was a Tuesday. We arrived into Toronto. It was the first time I arrived seeing 14 lanes of traffic. I doing 60 mile an hour bumper to bumper. It was a total bloody nightmare, I tell you. But we arrived at Sean and when we got there, the next day, Deirdres and Mark arrived. And we went downtown to meet them because they didn't know where to come to. She rang up and Sean says, we know where you are, we won't pick you. When we went down to Deirdre gets out of the car and runs over, and this fella gets out of the car, this on the other side. And I said, this bike can't be from Chicago. He looked more Irish than I did. I think I looked at this fella, and he looked like he was from either Grange Valley or Dundee or Alabama or somewhere else. He just couldn't be possibly from Chicago. So anyway, that was Wednesday. Thursday morning, Sean and Karen had something arranged for us the whole time we were there. But on Thursday morning, Deirdre says, Mark and I would like to bring you myself and Mum out for a meal tonight, or some night. But Sean and Karen said, look, today is the best night because we have a few things arranged. Karen booked our meal in a place called Shamong Lodge, overlooking Shamong Lake. Now when I tell you it's a lake, it's as big as the Irish Sea, but it's really a lake over there. Beautiful, but that year was the coldest winter they had in many years, and the lake had 9 feet of ice on it, so it wasn't pictured that way. But we had a beautiful meal, and at the end of the meal, I noticed, like I should have copped on the area, but Mark was shuffling a bit. He was sort of twisting around a little bit. Didn't know what he was on. So all of a sudden he said to me, we went to the car. I thought he went to the men's room, but he came back and he went into the car and he sat down. Now I'm sitting opposite Deirdre. Mark's beside me, he's sitting opposite Mary. And he made a lovely little speech. And out of his pocket he took a little box. And there and then he proposed to Deirdre across the table. Now there are very few times in my life that I was stuck for something to say. But whatever happened, my voice box switched off. I'm looking across the table. Deirdre's looking at the Mark side, she's looking at his side. My wife Mary is a very talented lady. But that night I saw talent I never knew she had. She was laughing and crying simultaneously. So I'm sitting there like a dummy. Whenever we come home, Sean and Karen, the big reception, when they told them the big reception for us, the place went crazy. People, friends come in with a cake, all sorts of things. I just couldn't grasp this thing at all. I'm telling you against this, I've been very savage, but I just couldn't hack this. So anyway, we all went to bed, whatever time it was, and about 1 o'clock I couldn't sleep. So I got up. Now Sean and Karen have a beautiful big red setter called Kylie, big dog. And when I go up into Sean's lounge, his dog was lying on the sofa. Now if anybody had been able to read the mind of a dog, and see an expression and me walking up to him, that it would have been very interesting to see what he had to say. But I sat down with this dog and we had a chat for about 4 hours. And I got dressed at 5 o'clock and started walking down from the house with the dog for a walk. And this is Good Friday morning, the 1st of April 1994. And there's a Dunkin' Donut shop at the bottom of the hill. On a Good Friday morning, and the place was packed and they were all having naked egg and sausage. You wouldn't be able to draw it, I'll tell you. But anyway, I came back up to the house at about 7 o'clock, and Sean was walking around getting the breakfast. And Sean said, what's wrong with you? And Sean, I said, I can't hack this. I said, I come over here on a Tuesday night, I meet Deirdre and this chap Mark on a Wednesday night, and on a Thursday night he's my son-in-law. I don't want to help him. I said, I just can't hack this. I'm just not able for this. I'm not with it at all. He says, look what he said, you want to start counting your blessings by? And I said, why is that? He says, what's your daughter going to marry? The guy's 6'4", he has red hair and freckles, he's white, he's a Roman Catholic, he's from a family of 9, his mother and father are still living together. What the hell more do you want? Well, I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, that Mark Maron has been made a bigger, big impression in our lives. We would have to say to his mum and dad, you ought to be very proud of your son and the rest of your family, for you certainly raised a very proudful family, that's for sure. We're delighted that he's a member of our family now. It's not a separate family, it's just a one family. About Deirdre, I was thinking of a few adjectives I'd like to use to describe Deirdre. Now, I have two little things here, which probably, if I said it, you'd say I was biased, and of course you'd be right. But I would mean it. But here's two little statements I found when I got rooting through our filing cabinet one day, and this is a reference she received some years ago, and it says, "She's an intelligent and hard-working student. She can be depended upon to do her academic work with great competence. An indication of her generosity of her character, is the work she does for the St. Vincent de Paul Society. She is completely honest and utterly reliable, and I recommend her in the highest possible terms." And that was from a Professor Gerard Watson, the Professor of Ancient Classics in the University of Maynooth. And I thought that was some reference. The other one that struck me was, once you got a few years earlier. Now, we have a convent in Drogheda called the Convent of Mercy. And at one time we had a principal there called Sister Monica. Sister Monica, she was on earth before. I suspect in Cromwell's time. But when she told you something, by God, you sat up and listened. And if she had something to say about you, she said it. But the other thing about her was, she would never write a reference unless she meant it. And if somebody came looking for a reference, she would call the parents in and she says, "I cannot give your daughter the reference that she wants. But if you want, I'll give her the reference as I see it." Now, this is the one she gave Deirdre. The above-named student completed her leaving certificate in June of every year, having spent 5 years as a student here. During this time, she proved to be a thoroughly cooperative both with myself as principal and with her subject teachers. She was courteous and pleasant in manner, and never allowed herself to be unduly influenced by peer group pressure. Consequently, she has developed into a young lady of great personal integrity. As a senior student of this school, she assumed her responsibilities with a great sense of maturity and dedication, and exercised qualities of leadership, which left a special stamp for this school. I recommend her without reserve. Deirdre is trustworthy, dependable. She's certainly not boring, that's for sure. She has her mother's thriftiness and organisation skills and her father's wiry temperament. Without doubt, I would like to say that to Deirdre and Mark, Mary and I will be married 30 years in September, and Joe and Mary Marin will be married 40 years in October. And if you just make half a fist of it, as we've made of it, this will do okay. I wish you both long and happy lives together, and may all our fortunes be good ones. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask you to stand as I propose a toast to the bride and groom. The bride and groom.
I was hiding.
One more time.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.